Lift up your heart and praise. Lift up your hands and praise. Lift up your voice and praise.
And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. It's a praise to be here on Yahweh's set-apart day. Amen. Amen. Glad to have you joining with us over the internet, and glad to see everyone here today. The name of the message today is called Living on the Edge. Have you ever heard the term living on the edge? Sure you have. Sure you have. When we hear that, even before we know the particulars of what it's being said about, it usually makes us preconceive the idea that whatever it is that's being referred to, that there's some sort of danger associated with it, and that there's risk being involved when we hear so-and-so is living on the edge. All right? We know that this means that some behavior is being practiced which could turn out in a way that would repay disaster in exchange for the thrill, or in some cases in exchange for mere lack of discipline. Daredevils, by the very name, are people who take dangerous risk by living on the edge. All right? Many others like to watch them living on the edge and taking risks, and we enjoy watching to see if the daredevil can beat the odds. You know, and when they do, the spectators are wowed and they clap and they appreciate the daredevil's success. And when they don't beat the odds, people say things like, something like that was bound to happen. Or yeah, he got a little too close to the edge that time, didn't he? Yeah. Getting too close to the edge means that they, or we, lost the bet against the odds, and now we have to pay the consequences. And that can come in all sorts of payment. From loss of finances, relationships, health, reputation, homes, jobs, you name it. All right? Payment can come in the form of the loss of life even, or even everlasting life. It's one thing when we're playing a game with our friends and we take a risk that doesn't work out and we momentarily lose face. Chris and I know what that's about. And everyone, including ourselves, have a good laugh. And sometimes that was the intended result. I mean, yeah. So sometimes living on the edge can be fun. Right? But when the cost is high, like with those other things that I mentioned, you have to ask, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it? Especially when we're living on the edge in our relationship with Yahweh in our everlasting life. A friend showed me this illustration one time. I wish I'd put it up here, where he drew this big circle on the board, and he wrote Yahweh in the middle of the circle. And the circle represented the kingdom of Yahweh and where His will reigns. Right? The other side of the line, of course, was outside of the will of Yahweh, and it represented the world and the territory where Hasatan operates. But in the middle of the circle, he placed the name Yahweh. Now, obviously, the center of the circle is where one of Yahweh's children who love Him and want to live in His will would ultimately want to be, right? Sure. A problem arises when we begin to follow our own desires in such a way that we start trying to see just how close we can get to the edge. All right? Without actually going over, while still considering ourselves to be inside the circle of Yahweh's reign. There's several problems with that. Most likely, the biggest one is that we started moving away from Yahweh in the first place. All right? But another really big one is that the problem that all people face when living on the edge, and that is being that when our foot slips and we fall. All right? So I'd like for us to ask ourselves, where in my life could I be living on the edge with my relationship with Yahweh? That's a good question. All right? Because it could be a matter of life or death. Let's look in James chapter 4. Jacob chapter 4. We are going to be on page 1176 in the 1998 ISR. James chapter 4, we're going to start reading in verse 1. And it says, "Where do fightings and strivings come from among you? Do they not come from your pleasures that battle in your members? You desire and do not have. You murder and are jealous and are unable to obtain. You strive and fight, and you do not possess because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask evilly, in order to spend it on your pleasures. Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of Elohim." Do you know what enmity means? Okay, according to Merriam-Webster, it's defined this way: positive, active, and typically mutual hatred or ill will. Okay? I can only speak for myself, but that's not the relationship that I want with Yahweh. Nope. Okay. And that ought to speak volumes to us about seeing just how close we can get to the edge. Amen? All right? Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with Elohim? Whoever therefore intends to be a friend of the world makes himself, see here we go, an enemy of Elohim. Who wants to be an enemy of Elohim? Then we might need to think about who we're being friends with. Amen? Or do you think that the Scripture speaks to no purpose? Does the Spirit which dwells in us intensely crave unto envy? But He gives greater favor. Because of this, He says, Elohim resists the proud but gives favor to the humble. So then subject yourselves to Elohim. Resist the devil and he shall flee from you. Draw near to Elohim, he shall draw near to you. Cleanse hands, sinners, and cleanse the hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to dejection. Now, this is talking about being ashamed of your unrighteous joy that you have practiced. All right. Humble yourself in the sight of the Master, and he shall lift you up. Brothers, do not speak against one another. He that speaks against a brother and judges his brother speaks against the Torah and judges Torah. And if you judge Torah, you are not a doer of Torah, but a judge. There's one lawgiver and judge who is able to save and to destroy. Who are you to judge another? Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow, let us go to such and such city, spend a year there, and trade and make a profit, when you do not know of tomorrow. For what is your life? For it is a vapor that appears for a little while and then disappears, instead of your saying, if the Master desires, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your proud speeches. All such boasting is wicked. To him then who knows to do good, this is getting us back to our living on the edge, to him then who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. I would think that moving away from Yahweh would be doing what we know not to be good and therefore sin. Amen? Amen. All right. Enmity with Elohim can't be a good thing. There are so many ways in which people find themselves living on the edge. or over the line, as the case may be. And the scary thing is that in a lot of ways, when we start trying to see how far we can go, we're already over the line. Already over the line. Now, let's talk about some ways that we can deceive ourselves. Have you ever heard someone say, well, he'll just have to forgive me? Have you ever heard, yeah, you've heard people say that before, he'll just have to forgive me. Guess what? He doesn't, and he won't. Not with that attitude. Turn with me to Deuteronomy 29. Devarim 29. Oh yeah, that's one of those proud speeches in just one sentence. He'll have to forgive me. Deuteronomy 29, we're going to start reading in verse 19. And it says, and it shall be when he hears the words of this curse that he should bless himself in his heart, saying, I have peace, though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart, in order to add drunkenness to thirst. And what are these next 5 words? Yahweh would not forgive him. But rather the displeasure of Yahweh and his jealousy shall burn against that man, and every curse that's written in this book shall settle on him, and Yahweh shall blot out his name from under the heavens. And Yahweh shall separate him for what? Evil. Out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in the book of the Torah. I can tell you this, if somebody says, well, he'll just have to forgive me, that's walking in the stubbornness of your heart. Amen? No, he will not have to forgive you, and you will not be in the reign of Elohim with a stubborn heart like that. All right? Yahweh has a way of dealing with rebellion. You know? He sure does. Then you got those folks who still have rebellion in their heart, but they try to cover it up. All right? Either by fooling themselves or trying to fool everyone else into signing on to it. They try and justify unrighteousness on some technicality which they think that they have found in the wording or lack thereof. Listen, you're not going to beat Yahweh at technicalities. You're not going to beat Yahweh at technicalities. How did that work out for Adam and Hawa? Not so good. It doesn't matter if you come up with some personal justification for a rebellious heart. And I'm here to tell you, if you eat that fruit, you're going to get the boot. All right? Boom. That's right. Just like Adam and Hawa. If you eat the fruit, you're going to get the boot. One verse here, you don't have to turn here. Proverbs 21:2 says, all a man's ways are right in his own eyes, but Yahweh weighs the hearts. Okay? You're not going to beat him at technicalities. All right? Look with me in Matthew 15. Matthew 15. We're going to start reading in verse 1. This is one that we're all quite familiar with. Matthew 15, verse 1. Then there came to Yahshua scribes and Pharisees from Jerusalem, saying, why do your taught ones transgress the traditions of our elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread. But he answering said to them, why do you also transgress the command of Elohim because of your tradition? For Elohim has commanded, saying, respect your father and your mother, and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, whoever says to his father or mother, what profit you might have received from me has been dedicated, is certainly released from respecting his father or his mother. So you have nullified the command of Elohim by your tradition. Hypocrites. Yeshayahu rightly prophesied about you, saying, this people draws near to me with their mouth and respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. All right, now, we're going to keep reading along, but that's one of those things that we really need to be mindful of if we're trying to beat Yahweh at a technicality. Okay? They draw near to me with their mouth, but respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching his teachings the commands of men. And calling the crowd near, he said to them, hear and understand, not that which goes into the mouth defiles a man, but that which comes out of the mouth, this defiles the man. And then his taught ones came and said to him, do you not know that the Pharisees stumbled when they heard this word? I can tell you that in a lot of cases when you tell someone that they're transgressing the command of Elohim because of something that they have contrived, they're liable to stumble. All right? But he answered and said, every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. Leave them alone, they are blind teachers of the blind, and if the blind leads the blind, both shall fall into a ditch. And Kepha answering said to him, that'd be Peter, explain this parable to us. And Yeshua said, are you still without understanding? Do you not understand that whatever enters into the mouth goes into the stomach and is cast out in the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth from the heart comes from the heart, and these defile the man. For out of the heart come forth, what are those two words? Wicked reasonings. Do you see that the very first thing in this list of things which defile a man is wicked reasonings? All right, murders, adulteries, whorings, thefts, false witnessings, slanders. These defile the man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. No, we're not going to beat Yahweh with what we think is a technicality that we think we have found in Yahweh's law. Don't forget who wrote the law. All right? All right. We will defile ourselves is what we'll do, living on the edge, trying to see how close we can get to it and get away with it. Wicked reasonings. Because Yahweh knows the heart, brothers and sisters. Now, for those of you who don't have teenagers, you will likely have this to look forward to. All right? For those of you who have or have had teenagers, you will likely encounter this, what I'm about to share with you. And since all of us have been teenagers at some point, we know the routine. Right, we know the routine. Technically is the way in which too many teenagers try to convince their parents that they were obedient to a parental directive when in actuality they knew all along that they were doing what they wanted to do. See, Jenny's already smiling. They were doing what they wanted to do rather than satisfying the expectation of the parents and their instructions technically. See, it goes like this. See, I see Chris is over there nodding. It goes like this. For instance, they have a friend over to spend the night, and the parent says, don't you two stay up all night watching TV. I expect you to be in bed at 11 o'clock. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. The next morning, they have to be pried out of the bed. All right? With obvious signs that they have been up most of the night. I thought I told you to, not to stay up all night, and I expected you to be in bed at 11 o'clock. See, you've been teenagers. You're already nodding. All right? The teenagers say, well, technically, you didn't say we had to go to sleep. You said don't stay up all night watching TV. You didn't say we couldn't watch YouTube and Facebook on our tablets and text with our friends on our cell phones. We just had to be in bed at 11 o'clock. So we got our tablets and our cell phones and we got into bed at 11 o'clock, so technically we did what you said. Right. And we didn't stay up watching TV. That's what you said. Why are you so mad at us? We did what you said. Does that make you feel respected as a parent? No, it did. No, I should think not. And of course, you see right through this. I mean, The kids saw through it too. But you see right through this, all right? Everybody knew what was expected, but they or we thought we could play this little game where we try and convince our parents that we were being obedient to their instructions when all along we knew in our hearts that we were seeking our own desire and expecting the parent to yield because we had beaten them at a technicality or two or three. But if this is the kind of parent that doesn't spare the rod, it's not the parent who's going to get beaten from a technicality. It's something else that's going to get beaten. I mean, all right. And you can talk all you want, but the parent is well aware that you are outside of their will. All right? And I would say that this is wicked reasoning towards the parents, wouldn't you? Do you think that Yahweh, our Father, is any more impressed when we try to beat Him at a technicality? Oh no, he's quite impressed with it. Yeah, he's quite impressed. He's just not persuaded by it. All right? But it certainly gives him an impression. And do you think Yahweh is looking for people who look Him in the eye and say, technically, I did what you said? Or is He looking for people who have a heart for Him? Okay? That's what we're talking about. I think He probably gets quite disgusted with us rather than when we do things like that, rather than serving Him with a clean heart. All right? We instead look for loopholes in His Torah so as to seek our own desire. Besides, you might think you found a loophole, but you actually overlooked the small print. Small print can get you just as... That's right, the small print. Now, you know that Hasatan is a fisher of men also. Amen? People don't think about that. He's also a hunter and a trapper of men. And he's going to use whatever he needs to catch you or me, but he is a hunter and a trapper. Now, Scripture talks about not getting ensnared and trapped and things like that in lots of places. Do you know what a snare is? Okay. Everyone's seen a snare before, right? All right, well, if you hadn't, it's a trap set by a hunter that consisting of something to bind the prey with, all right, which is configured in a loop and placed around this bait, okay? It's placed around the bait, and when the prey steps inside the loop hole to take the bait, it is trapped. A snare is a loophole which surrounds the bait. All right? Joey added a little play on words to this one time. Some of you may remember it. He said, a snare is a trap set by a hunter consisting of a loophole placed around debate. Debate. That's a good one. Now, that's especially true when we consider living on the edge while trying to beat Yahweh at technicalities. Amen? All right. The hunter here, of course, is who? Hasatan. And oftentimes, he uses to debate to lead us away from righteous decisions. And we can't be in Yahweh's will while living on the edge. Now, let's look at something else that James says about this very thing and being drawn away from Yahweh and being trapped. James chapter 1, Jacob chapter 1. Page 1179 in the ISR. I'm sorry. Did I say 1174? I'm sorry, 1174. James 1 verse 13. Let no one say when he is enticed, I am enticed by Elohim, for Elohim is not enticed by evil matters, and he entices no one. But each one is enticed when he is, read these next 8 words with me, drawn away by his own desires and trapped. Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it has been accomplished, brings forth death. I told you, everlasting life. Do not go astray, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change, nor shadow of turning. Having proposed it, he brought us forth by the word of truth, for us to be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. So then, my beloved brothers, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Elohim. Therefore, put away most filthiness and overflow of evil. That's not what yours says. Yours doesn't say most. Mine doesn't either. Therefore, put away all filthiness. Glad y'all were paying attention. Therefore, put away all filthiness and overflow of evil, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your lives. And become doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like a man who looks at his natural face in the mirror, for he looks at himself and goes away and immediately forgets what he was like. But he that looked into the perfect Torah, you said it's a perfect Torah, that of freedom, and continues in it, not becoming a hearer that forgets, but a doer of works, this one shall be blessed in his doing of the Torah. That's those trying to get nearer to Yahweh in that circle. All right? Not living on the edge. I mean, right? If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, did you see that part? But deceives his own heart, this one's religion is what? Worthless. Clean and undefiled religion before Elohim, the Elohim and Father, is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Now, this is just one verse here. It's something that Peter said in 1 Peter 5:8, and I'll just read it to you. Be sober, watch, because your adversary the devil walks about like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Right? And he can easily snatch those that are walking on the edge. Again, look at what happened to Adam and Hawa. Just how close to the edge do you need to be? You don't ever really know, do you? All right? How many of you folks know what parkour is? One? Some of you know what it is. I know you've seen this. It's a physical, and I would say a mental discipline where a person tries to get from point A to point B in the quickest and shortest distance. You've likely seen videos of these folks jumping across walls and swinging over ledges and jumping off of roofs and landing on the ground and doing a somersault while they go to the next obstacle to get to the end. And it looks quite impressive. All right? There is risk and discipline involved in this, and I'm sure quite a few bruises and sprains and possible broken bones along the way in order to become proficient at it. Then there's something called free running. Does anybody know what free running is? Okay. Well, you might not realize that there's a difference between the two, but free running incorporates a lot of fancy moves and flips and spins and things like that into parkour. All right? It's kind of like a cross between breakdancing and gymnastics. Okay? And in some ways, it raises the risk level involved in doing this, and many of the free runners take greater and greater risk as they do this, like running on the edges of high buildings and jumping across rooftops and over streets. You've seen that stuff before on YouTube and things, haven't you? Yeah, sure you have. And jumping over other dangerous things or jumping through dangerous things as they do that. And if you look at some of the parkour and free running fail videos, you will see that sometimes these folks get hurt pretty badly. And some of them die. And for what? For the thrill of beating the odds to see if they can get away with it. It's kind of like a thief that steals for fun. You know, there's a thrill involved. They don't need it. They're not hungry. They just want to see if they can get away with stealing. All right? They like living on the edge, and they want to see how close they can get. I wonder if sometimes we find ourselves practicing parkour or even free running with the Word and the will of Yahweh. That's something to think about. Where might we be trying to live on the edge and beat Yahweh with technicalities? Sabbath breaking, sexual immorality, intoxication, tithing, profaning the name of Yahweh with pagan titles, the things we watch and listen to and bring into our homes. You name it. If there's something you don't want to do, or something that you do want to do, you can likely find a way to justify it in yours or my own mind. I'm going to share some examples of things that people shared with me in the past. I will protect the identities. I know a person who goes dancing on the Sabbath. Right? And they know they're supposed to be keeping the Sabbath, but they do this regularly because they have a bad knee. They have a bad knee, and they say that it's therapeutic and it's okay to heal on the Sabbath. But you see, the thing is, it's not worship dancing. It's worldly dancing. Okay? Huh? Debbie said it might be why they still have a bad knee. I've heard people who are regularly intoxicated with drugs say things like, well, technically, it says don't be drunk with wine or strong drink. I'm not drinking anything. I know a situation where a man impregnated a woman out of wedlock. When I told him it was a sin, he said, but I just know she's Israel. I said, Israel's not supposed to be whoring, and you even whored with her in her father's house. Technically. He said, well, technically it's not her father's house. And then said, well, he does own it, but he doesn't live there. He was serious. I was shocked. Sort of. People do the same kind of things with tithing to Yahweh, and they'll say things like, "Well, I'm not a farmer," or "I didn't get a raise," or whatever. And folks, Yahweh doesn't need your money. He doesn't. Matter of fact, He's the one that makes it possible. Okay, but He wants your love, and we got some new folks here today, and we may have new folks joining on the outreach video there. I want to share something with you. I hate to even say anything about tithing. We have 250 videos on YouTube. There's only one of them that says anything at all about tithing. Try that at church, and it was in January of 2015 when it was given. Okay. And the reason that I say that is I don't want somebody walking away from here and say, oh, he's just making a pitch for tithe. And I'm not, because your tithe needs to go to Yahweh. I'm not talking about at the congregation. I'm talking about tithing to Yahweh. And people come up with all kinds of reasons. You know, you don't have to keep Sabbath here, okay? But Yahweh expects you to keep Sabbath, not dancing, okay? Then you have all these reasons why it's okay to call Him by pagan names while attempting to seek His face. That's kind of strange. All right? The things that people try to beat Yahweh at is seemingly endless. And do you think Yahweh is buying this kind of stuff? Do you think He feels respected? No, I think, turn with me to Proverbs 24. Proverbs 24. And we're going to be on page 749. And we're going to start reading in verse 9. Proverbs 24:9. The purpose of folly is sin. I want to share this with you real quickly. When we look through the Scripture, even when Yahshua is speaking to us, when He talks about foolishness and folly, it's always referring to being unrighteous versus being righteous. All right? Folly is what we do when we are being foolish, and it is unrighteous. The purpose of folly is sin, and the scoffer is an abomination to men. If you falter in the day of distress, your strength is small. Deliver those taken to death, and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. Said that you don't want to be walking on the edge and stumbling. Amen. All right, and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, "See, we did not know this," would not He who weighs the hearts discern it? He who watches over your life. Did you see what that said? He who watches over your life, would He not know it? And shall He not repay man according to his work? All right? Now, the next thing I'd like to look at is Deuteronomy 32. All right? I wanted to read the whole chapter, but because of the constraints of time, we're just not going to do that today. But I encourage you to read the whole chapter. Maybe after you watch this message at home or whatever. But Yahweh's chastising Israel because He knows they're going to forsake Him. And He knows that they are going to transgress His commands, and He knows that they are going to go and serve other mighty ones of the people around them. All right, I want to start reading in verse 18. And it says, "You neglected the rock who brought you forth, and forgot the El who fathered you." All right? And Yahweh saw and despised because of the provocation of His sons and His daughters. Who's He talking about here? His sons and His daughters. All right? And Yahweh saw and despised because of the provocation of His sons and His daughters. And He said, "Let me hide my face from them. Let me see what their end is. For they are a perverse generation, children in whom there is no trusting. They made me jealous by what is not El. They provoked me with their worthless matters. But I make them jealous by those who are no people. I provoke them with a foolish nation. For a fire was kindled in my wrath, and burns to the bottom of Sheol, and consumes the earth and its increase, and sets on fire the foundations of the mountains. I gather evils upon them. I use up my arrows upon them." Do you want to be on the receiving end of that? No. "Wasted by scarcity of food, and consumed by heat and bitter destruction. And the teeth of beasts I send upon them, with the poison of serpents of the dust. The sword bereaves them from the outside, and fear from within, both young man and maiden, nursing child with the man of gray hairs. I said, I should blow them away. I should make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. I did not fear the enemy's talk. If I did not fear the enemy's talk, lest their adversaries misunderstand, lest they say, our hand is high and Yahweh has not done all this. For they are a nation lost to counsel. And there's no understanding in them. If they were wise, they would understand this. They would consider their latter end. How would one chase 1,000 and put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them and Yahweh had given them up? For their rock is not like our rock. Even our enemies are judges. Their vine is the vine of Sodom and the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of serpents and the fierce venom of cobras. Is it not stored up with me, sealed up among my treasures? Now notice what can happen when you're living on the edge. Verse 35. Vengeance is mine and repayment at the time of what? Their foot slips. For near is the day of their calamity, and the matters prepared are hastening to them. Yahweh doesn't want to hear our reasons. He told us what He expects. Okay? Verse 36. For Yahweh rightly rules His people, and has compassion on His servants when He sees that their power is gone, and there is no one remaining, shut up or at large. And He shall say, where are their mighty ones, the rock in whom they sought refuge? Who ate the fat of their slaughterings and drank the wine of their drink offering? Let them arise and help you. Let it be a hiding place for you. See now that I am He, and there is no Elohim besides me. I put to death, and I make alive. I have wounded, and I heal, and from my hand no one delivers. Vengeance is mine and repayment at the time their foot slips. Now, I want you to compare that with this next passage. Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. We're going to be on page 923. We're going to start reading in verse 13. I want you to compare what Yahshua says with what we just read. Yahshua says in verse 13, enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide, and the way is broad that leads to where? Destruction. And there are many who enter in through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. Now, that word which is translated here, hard pressed, is the Greek word philebo. Philebo. Thayer's definition, I'm going to read it to you, but I want you to look at number 1 first. It says, to press as grapes, press hard upon. Okay? Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few that find it. All right, the next translation is a compressed way, narrow, straightened, contracted, and 3, metaphorically, to trouble, afflict, or distress. That's why you'll see some translations say that the way is afflicted. You know, ISR translated it hard pressed. I think that it's not a stretch to say that Yahshua is directing us to make firm, well-placed, and deliberate steps on this path of life. All right? The word in Aramaic is translated typically straight or strict, which also means in a disciplined manner. All right? Not running around shucking and jibing with the will and the word of Yahweh. All right? The path to life is made with strict, disciplined, straight steps. All right? And why might that be? Because vengeance is mine and repayment at the time their foot does what? Slips. And if you've ever stepped on some grapes in the floor, you might realize how slippery that can be just in and of itself. All right? Disciplined, hard, deliberate steps. Psalm 51. Psalm 51. We're going to be on page 673. I think this is where we're wanting to get to right here. Psalm 51 and 1. Show me favor, O Elohim, according to your kindness, according to the greatness of your compassion. Blot out my transgressions. Wash me completely from my guilt and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. Against you You alone have I sinned, and done evil in your eyes, that you might be proven right in your words. Be clear when you judge. See, I was brought forth in crookedness, and in sin my mother conceived me. See, you have desired truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part you make me know wisdom. Cleanse me with hyssop, and I am clean. Wash me, and I am whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones you have crushed rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all my crookedness. Watch this. Create in me a clean heart, O Elohim, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me away from your presence, and do not take your set-apart spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your deliverance, and uphold me, noble spirit. Let me teach transgressors your way, so that sinners turn, what? Back to you. Deliver me from blood guilt. See, turn back to you. That means move away from the edge. Amen? All right. Deliver me from blood guilt, O Elohim. Elohim of my deliverance. Let my tongue sing aloud of your righteousness. O Yahweh, open my lips that my mouth declare your praise. For you do not desire slaughtering, or I would give it. You do not delight in burnt offering. The slaughterings of Elohim are a broken spirit. We gave a message a week or two ago about being broken, didn't we? All right? Elohim are a broken spirit, a heart broken and crushed. O Elohim, these you do not despise. Do good in your good display and your good pleasure to Zion. Build the walls of Jerusalem. Then you would delight in slaughterings of righteousness, in burnt offering, complete burnt offering. Then young bulls would be offered on your altar. So, wherever we may be falling away, we need to turn back and seek Yahweh's will and His way. Right? From the heart comes what? Wicked reasonings. May He create in us a clean heart. Amen. O Elohim, and renew a steadfast spirit within us. Our last passage we're going to look at today is Zechariah chapter 1. That's going to be on page 634. Zechariah chapter 1, verse 2, it says, Yahweh was very wroth with your fathers. And you shall say to them, Thus said Yahweh of hosts, Turn back to me, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I shall turn back to you, declares Yahweh of hosts. That's encouraging, amen? All right? So if we're headed towards that edge there, if we'll turn back to Him, He'll turn back to us. So may we consider our way. Are we turning back to Yahweh, deliberate in our steps on the path that leads to life, or are we on the way that leads to destruction? As soon as we start trying to see how far away we can get, we're already getting out of His will. So don't be like those free runners pushing the limits. See, we don't want to be a daredevil. You know why? Because we're actually daring Yahweh. Actually daring Yahweh. It can cause you trouble now, and it can even cost you your everlasting life. And if we want to have everlasting life with Him, we need to be wary of living on the edge. Yevrakeka Yahweh ba'ishmareka ya'er Yahweh panavaleka bikuneka Yasa Yahweh panavaleka bi'asem laka shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.